3 spine-chilling true night drive encounters exposing sinister secrets and unexplained horrors. The night air wrapped around Sarah like a cold, clammy sheet as she left the hospital. Another grueling shift completed, her heart still racing with the adrenaline of chaos. As she slipped into her car, a sense of aching warm familiarity washed over her, the thought of holding her daughter, Emma, close. But tonight, the quiet suburban streets of Omaha felt oddly alive, as if something unseen lurked in the shadows, waiting, watching. Turning down the dark, twisted roads, she felt the weight of the darkness pressing against her. It wasn't long before she noticed it, a figure by the old park swing set, a silhouette defined by the dim glow of her headlights. It was Mr. Jenkins, the friendly if peculiar neighbor. His age-worn face lit up as he waved, but something was off. The smile that should have been warm twisted into something unsettling, and for a split second, she felt a chill clawing at her skin. Just a trick of the light, she told herself, shaking off the sensation as she laughed nervously and drove on. That first jolt of fear was only the beginning. On her drive home the next night, she caught a glimpse in her rearview mirror, 2 headlights flashing erratically behind her, shifting as she turned left and right, always keeping pace. Her heart pounded against her chest as she dismissed it all, convincing herself it was just overworked nerves, but the whispers in the air grew louder, swirling around her like a malevolent wind. They echoed secrets of dread, stories no one wanted to hear. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The oppressive atmosphere sent shivers down her spine as she confided in Laura, her supportive work friend. You need to breathe and focus on what's real, Laura said matter-of-factly, brushing off the feeling of danger. But Sarah's unease tightened like a noose, and the familiar faces around her became masks of indifference, concealing a veil of shame and darkness looming over their neat, cookie-cutter homes. One evening, while fixing a creaky door hinge, Sarah remembered a summer chat with Mr. Jenkins about the abandoned house at the end of the street, a place he warned was steeped in tragedy. Driven by a mix of dread and curiosity, she ventured into his garage, revealing a stash of haunting photographs hidden beneath an old, dusty tarp. Each image featured families just like hers. One chilling picture capturing Emma playing outside, a snapshot caught in time that clawed at her chest. The world swirled around her, and she felt the ground tremble beneath her feet. When she confronted Mr. Jenkins about the photographs, his demeanor shifted from helpful neighbor to a chilling specter. With a voice dripping in menace, he whispered promises and threats cloaked in sweet tones, leaving her grasping for sanity. She could feel the walls closing in, trapping her in a web of paranoia as her instincts kicked into high gear. Heart racing, she slammed her door shut, darting her eyes around for escape. As dread washed over her, she drove through the neighborhood, hoping for safety. But the headlights behind her surged forth, casting sinister shadows that loomed and beckoned her closer to an unseen doom. The night pulsed with a life of its own, and she knew she was no longer just driving home. She was fleeing. But from what? Suddenly, the power surged through the neighborhood, every light flickering and plunging her into a suffocating darkness. Now lost, panic filled the cockpit of her car. Trusting the familiar twisted road, she felt the suffocating grip of fear as memories of betrayal and whispers of urban legends invaded her mind. That sense of safety, the half-truth of neighborhood bonds, shattered in an instant. Just then, a figure emerged from the fog. Her heart dropped into her stomach as cold realization hit her like a punch. She knew that shape all too well. The figure stepped forward from the shadows, the moonlight catching the familiar contours of Mr. Jenkins. But in that moment, the man she had known as a quirky neighbor twisted into something nightmarish. His eyes glinted with an unsettling hunger, and a smile that no longer resembled kindness stretched across his face. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest as her mind raced, trying to conjure reasons for his sudden appearance. Had he been waiting for her, or was it pure coincidence? She slammed her foot on the gas, desperate to escape, but the streets were eerily empty. The headlights behind her pulsed like a heartbeat, relentless and determined. The distant thrum echoed her rising hysteria as she swung her car around a bend, tires screeching on the slick asphalt. Stay calm, she chanted under her breath, but every fraction of a second felt like a countdown to disaster. The memories of the photographs invaded every thought. Families frozen in time, children playing innocently. Was Emma next? Her pulse quickened, every shadow on the road triggering a surge of terror. Suddenly, the headlights trailing her flickered, and the car behind abruptly vanished from sight. Confusion struck. Had they turned off, or was this some cruel game? She glanced nervously in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the taunting grin of Mr. Jenkins appear behind her. But there was nothing, only the pitch-black void that formed a suffocating cocoon around her. Just as she began to breathe a shaky sigh of relief, the car's engine sputtered. The dash lights flickered and dimmed. Panic clawed at her throat as she wrestled with the steering, the last remnants of control slipping away. If she stopped now, she would be vulnerable, open to whatever fears the night had wrapped around her like a deadly embrace. Come on, she urged the car, slamming her hands against the wheel, but the engine coughed again and failed. She plunged into darkness. Silence settled in, an overwhelming weight against her ears, broken only by the sound of her heartbeat thumping like a war drum. Adrenaline surged as she fumbled for her phone, praying for light. The screen illuminated her face. The brightness felt like a knife slicing into the surrounding dark. But the relief was fleeting. As Sarah peered out into the thickening shadow, movement flitted at the edge of the dim glow. Her breath caught. An ethereal figure loomed beyond the reach of her phone's light, shrouded in darkness both familiar and horrifying. It was more than a ghost. It bore the likeness of Emma, a twisted version of her innocent child, drawn into some ancient fear that clawed at Sarah's sanity. "Mommy," the voice came out soft, almost like a lost whisper, yet heavy with dread. Sarah's heart shattered as the world around her began to distort, her daughter's face contorting into grotesque features. No, this wasn't real. Frantic, she threw open the car door, stumbling onto the asphalt, the cool night air biting at her skin. The landscape melted away as echoes of laughter from the past suffocated her mind. Memories of Emma playing in the yard, giggling under the summer sun, flared up like fireflies, lighting up the darkness, but now tinged with ominous undertones. "Help me," the words slithered through the darkness, morphing from a plea to a command. Sarah had to escape this nightmare. With trembling hands, she collapsed to her knees. "Emma, I'll find you." Her own voice sounded distant, lost in the chaos that engulfed her, and then, like a cruel trick of fate, the lights sputtered back to life, illuminating the streets, revealing the abandoned house at the end of the lane, the epicenter of it all. The twisted memories grappling for survival within her screamed a warning. Sarah hesitated, knowing she had to face whatever horrors resided within those walls for Emma's sake. The question pressed against her mind. Would she be stepping into a trap, or could she truly save her child? The ground beneath her was trembling. Time was running out. As she moved toward the house, shadows twisted at the corners of her vision, urging her forward. What lay within? Would it be a way out, or a descent into the heart of the darkness that sought to claim her? In that moment, every instinct screamed for her to turn back, but she pressed on. What she didn't know was that the true horror had not yet revealed itself. The wooden door creaked slightly as Sarah approached, the sound reverberating like a funeral toll in the thick silence. The air around the house was heavy, drenched in the scent of damp earth and something else, something foul that twisted her stomach. She fought the urge to run, forcing her feet to carry her forward. Every step felt like wading through molasses, the weight of dread pulling her back. Dread gathered in her throat as she pushed the door open, its hinges groaning in protest. Darkness spilled out like a living thing, eager to consume. "Emma," she called, her voice trembling, swallowed by the shadows that loomed. Inside, the house felt like a crypt. Dust settled on every surface, remnants of a life forsaken. An old chandelier hung precariously overhead, its crystals weeping dust. A shaft of moonlight sliced through the darkness, illuminating a once grand staircase that spiraled upward into the unknown. "Mommy," the voice echoed again, more distant this time. It was unmistakably Emma's, stripped of joy layered with despair. Panic rose, thrumming in her ears. She sprinted toward the stairs, driven by instinct and fear. But with every gust of wind rattling the old windows, whispers danced around her, words lost in sinister laughter. Shadows flickered as she climbed, weaving through the remnants of broken picture frames on the walls, faces frozen in time, eyes that seemed to follow her ascent. One photograph caught her. A family portrait, the smiling faces now reduced to warped expressions of desperation. It felt like the walls were closing in around her, a grotesque trap. "Don't leave me," the plea sent shivers down her spine. She could almost feel the warmth of Emma's tiny hands reaching for her, desperately grasping at the tendrils of reality choking her. Reaching the second floor, Sarah was greeted by a long hallway. The air felt colder here, as if an unseen force stretched to pull her back. Each door was ajar, offering glimpses into rooms frozen in sepia tones, and unresolved past burdening her every breath. A soft thud echoed from the last room at the end of the hall. The sound was definitive, pulling her closer, compelling her to step inside. As she pushed the door open, it creaked ominously, revealing a room bathed in a ghostly shimmer. Candles flickered weakly, pooling shadows in the corners. Her heart raced. On the floor lay a circle etched in salt, the remnants of an unsettling ritual. In the center stood a doll, its eyes were eerily human, pleading and terrified, resembling Emma's lost innocence. "No, no," she gasped. The air became charged as the walls trembled, vibrating with a collective force, shaking her resolve. Whispered secrets slithered around her. Images of families trapped in misery flashed through her mind, each face bloody and contorted, a collection of echoes long silenced. "Help me, Mommy," the voice grew louder, angry, distorted, no longer innocent. It clawed at her ears, demanding attention. Sarah stumbled backward, realization crashing over her in waves. Who was she really trying to save? Was it Emma, or something wicked that wore her daughter's face? Her mind reeled as she was torn between love and dread. A shattering sound erupted from behind her. The door she had entered slammed shut, trapping her inside a world where nightmares reigned. Panic burst into a wildfire as she clawed at the door. It wouldn't budge. The shadows began to swirl, coalescing into a figure cloaked in darkness. A voice, cold as the earth itself, slithered from the silhouette. "It's too late to save her," the words detonated in her mind like a gunshot. The darkness surged toward her, enveloping her in a choking embrace, threatening to unravel her. Sarah grappled with fear. She had to fight, had to save her child. But as she turned toward the figure, something in her gut whispered that perhaps the horror was only beginning. Did she have the strength to face what lurked within the darkness, or was she destined to join the ranks of those lost forever? The walls echoed her thoughts like tormented souls, leaving one chilling question lingering in the air. What dark secret did this house hold, and could she ever escape it? The figure lunged toward her, shifting like smoke, a grotesque silhouette that promised to unravel her sanity. Sarah's heart pounded. In that moment, she felt the weight of eternity pressing down on her, suffocating. There was no escape. The walls seemed to breathe, tightening around her. "Mommy!" The voice echoed again, but now it was twisted, almost mocking. It sent chills racing down her spine, like icy fingers gripping her neck. She stumbled back, searching for somewhere to hide, but the shadows shifted, closing in. "Help me!" The tone was no longer Emma's sweet plea, but a venomous snarl. The creature that wore her child's voice was feeding on her fear. It was consuming her, and with every heartbeat, Sarah felt her own identity start to fracture. She darted toward the window, desperately clawing at the warped frame, but it wouldn't budge. She turned back, trembling. The circle of salt that had once seemed like a desperate protection now felt like a prison. The flickering candles cast a sinister light, illuminating the doll, its eyes glittering with an unnatural spark. "Come closer, Mommy," the voice called again, dripping with malevolence. "We can play forever." With adrenaline coursing through her veins, Sarah turned and charged toward the door, pounding against the wood with her fists. If she could just break free, escape this nightmare, she could find Emma, rescue her from whatever horror awaited. The pounding of her fists echoed through the room, a desperate cacophony against the rising whispers that threatened to drown her. The door rattled in response, creaking ominously. She felt a moment of hope. Would it give? But then a cold hand. No, a claw pressed against her back, freezing her in place. Heart racing, she angled her head to meet the figure's gaze. "Let us not be hasty," the voice hissed, the air heavy with rancid smells wafting from its dark maw. "You belong to this place now. And so does she." Fear coiled in her stomach like a snake ready to strike. The realization hit her: every family portrait, every anguished face, had been swallowed whole by this entity. It craved their despair, feeding off their memories. "Leave her alone," Sarah screamed, desperation fueling her resolve. She would not let it take her daughter too. But the figure only laughed, a low rumbling sound that echoed in her bones, shaking her spirit. With a sweep of its hand, doors began to slam shut along the hallway, one after another, sealing the escape routes. Sarah had nowhere left to run. Then it gestured, and Sarah felt a pull within her chest, as if the shadows themselves were reaching for her heart. "Join us," it beckoned, her body betraying her as she stumbled forward. Thoughts of Emma flickered like dying embers in her mind. "No," she fought back, wrestling with an unseen force. Out of primal instinct, she lunged for the doll, grasping its cold, unyielding form with a fierce grip. "You want her, you take me instead." The figure paused, momentarily stalling. A flicker of surprise crossed its grotesque face. "So willing to sacrifice?" it hissed, a hint of interest sparking in its voice. "Yes," Sarah gasped, the warmth of resolve pushing back the icy tendrils of despair. "Take me. Just let her go." The shadows hesitated, swirling around her, waiting, unsure. The humming intensity of her decision filled the air. But the whispers turned into screams, clamoring for her to back away, to flee. The very foundations of the house throbbed, rumbling like a beast awakening from slumber. Then, a loud crash erupted from the window. Shattered glass rained down, and a phantom hand shot through the opening, grasping for her. A flicker of hope in chaos. But was it truly salvation? Was it Emma or another trap? In that instant, Sarah realized. Escaping the darkness could cost her more than she had imagined. The room trembled, the very walls echoing the choice she now faced. Would she grasp the hope at the window, or would the dark embrace consume her entirely? As the shadows leaped forth, Sarah stood at the precipice of horror and choice, the question hammering in her mind. In a world that thrives on despair, could love truly conquer darkness, or was it merely an illusion waiting to be shattered? The room swirled with a palpably charged energy, the shadows quivering like trapped animals. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The phantom hand at the shattered window curled and twisted, clawing at the night air, the silhouette of a small figure faintly visible behind the void. Was it really Emma? "Mommy, help me!" The voice echoed from the darkness beyond, a plea that struck her with the force of a panic-fueled hurricane. She wavered, caught between two worlds, the certainty of familiar comfort, and the terrifying unknown that loomed behind her. Then something shifted. The figure behind her sucked the very light from the room, its form expanding and contracting, each movement more grotesque than the last. "You feel it, don't you? The bond between a mother and daughter." It hissed. "But does it hold the strength you think it does? Or is it you who will break?" "Shut up," Sarah screamed, her voice raw with defiance. She had to focus. Grasping the doll tightly in her hand felt like holding on to sanity itself. If she could just that flicker of hope surged again. She turned toward the window, the shards of glass glinting ominously, reflecting snippets of moonlight and distant stars. She lunged forward, the salt circle adhering to her skin like chains, pulling her back. The doll's face felt cold against her chest, but the promise of freedom beckoned. "Emma!" she cried, her heart racing. "I'm coming." Before she could process the danger, she threw herself toward the window, wanting to break through the veil that separated her from her daughter. She reached for the hand, a glimmer of longing igniting her spirit. Felt right, correct. But as she grasped the cool fingers, she was met with a sharp chill. The phantomesque laughter rang in her ears, filling her mind with echoes of anguish. "You grab, but what do you give?" she screamed, pain rippling through her arm as the shadows constricted tighter around her body, pulling her back with an impossible force. It felt as if tendrils were burying deep into her thoughts, gnawing at her will. The figure lunged forward, closer than ever. In a blur of motion, it flicked the doll from her grasp. "This?" it cackled, holding the doll high. "The key to your freedom?" "No." The word tore from Sarah's throat, desperation smashing against despair. She felt the echo of every heartbeat pounding in her ears, thrumming faster, louder, a symphony of fear. Time twisted, stretching as she watched the entity's claws rip through the doll's fabric, opening a gaping maw within it. Dark smoke billowed from the doll's interior, swirling rapidly, coiling around Sarah's legs like serpents. The voices of the damned, the soft cries of children, the terrified wails of mothers shouted around her, overlapping in a cacophony of anguish. "Join us, Sarah." The words crawled under her skin, igniting her terror. Was her love strong enough to withstand this torment? The shadows closed in, ready to drag her down, to erase her from existence, swallowing her whole. "Emma!" Sarah shrieked, eyes wild, searching for any sign of her daughter. In that moment, a faint flicker of light shone from within the swirling darkness, illuminating a small figure. It looked just like Emma, standing in the fragments of shattered dreams. "Mommy, help me." But as Sarah looked closer, she saw fear etched across her daughter's face, confusion mingling with terror. Something wasn't right. Suddenly, the shadows surged, and Sarah felt her legs weaken beneath her. Gripping her head, she fought against the whispers that filled her mind, urging her to give in, to surrender her pain. "Are you a mother? Or have you become one of them?" The figure taunted, mocking her resolve. Every instinct screamed to reach out, to protect, but what if this was a trap? Before she could decide, the floor shook violently below her, and her mind spun. Was she losing herself? The light flickered before her. The figure beyond the glass called her name once more, but dread seeped through her marrow. With a final surge of strength, she screamed, "I am coming, Emma." As she darted toward the window, a rush of shadows swarmed, wrapping around her waist, pulling her back into the darkness. Just as her fingers grasped the edge of the window, a blinding flash burst through the room. What had she unleashed? The forces of darkness howled around her, fingertips grazing her skin, urging her deeper into the abyss. And then she realized, in a world where nothing is as it seems, trust could cost her everything. Would she plunge into the light or drown in despair? As shadows loomed closer, Sarah whispered into the void, "What have I done?" The curtain of darkness descended, leaving only uncertainty in its wake. Sarah's heart thundered, reverberating in her chest like a drumbeat of doom. The blinding flash faded, leaving her vision spinning. The muffled cries of her daughter faded too, drowned out by the sinister whispers that surrounded her. The shadows, now solidifying into grotesque forms, danced around her, moving with a will of their own. They were hungry. She could feel their eyes on her, their intent sharp and predatory. "Come, Sarah, come to us." The voice was slippery, wrapping around her like a cold fog. "No, I won't," she shouted, forcing her legs to move, to push against the confines of the darkness. She squinted through the haze, her eyes searching for any sign of hope, any trace of Emma's light. The floor beneath her shook violently again, sending tremors through her bones. It was as if the very house was alive, writhing in agony. She stumbled but caught herself on the windowsill, the jagged glass biting into her skin. "Help me." The voice was so close now, drenched in despair yet dripping with sweetness. Time folded over itself, each heartbeat stretching, pulling her further into the abyss. What if she didn't belong here anymore? What if she slipped into the void forever? Twisting shadows wove together, forming a shape that was eerily familiar. Her mind screamed as the figure of a woman emerged, a shattered mirror reflecting her own likeness. It smiled with hollow eyes, a mouth stretched too wide, dripping with darkness. "You wanted to save your daughter, didn't you? What are you willing to sacrifice?" "Stay away," Sarah gasped, brushing the chill away as if it were smoke. She could feel the fear wrapping around her soul, tightening its grip. She took a deep breath, grounding herself as she stared down the entity that mocked her. "Your precious Emma is trapped just like you," it whispered, the words curling around her like vines. "Bring her back, but what will you give up?" Children crave their mother's light, and yet they are always drawn to the shadows. The truth crashed into her. Fear wrapped around her like a vice. What kind of world was this? She couldn't lose Emma. Not now when she was so close. "Let her go," Sarah screamed, the sound raw and desperate. "She's innocent. I won't let you take her." With every ounce of her being, she focused on the magic enshrined in her mother's love. She seized the salt that stained her palms, the only tether to reality she had left. "I am the light." She tossed it at the encroaching forms, the grains exploding in a spark of defiance. The shadow shrieked, fragments of darkness tearing apart as if stung. But it was only temporary. They fell back but didn't flee. "You cannot stop us, Sarah." You've already begun to cross the threshold. All it takes is one step, a heavy darkness pressed in, overwhelming every sliver of hope. Realization clawed at her. Every strand of anguish, every scream had led her here to this moment. She could feel the shadows lapping at her, seeking to pull her into eternal night. Emma! It was an instinctual scream, a plea for her life and her daughter's. Suddenly, a chilling laughter erupted from the depths of darkness. It wrapped around her like barbed wire, sinking into her skin. And then she saw it, the darkness parted, revealing Emma again. But this time the figure was slumped on the ground, shadows swirling around her, mocking Sarah's every fear. The lifeless eyes mirrored endless despair. No, Sarah choked, her throat closing. As she took a step closer, the room vibrated. The shadows rejuvenated with a sinister glee. Step away from the edge, Sarah, or both of you will be consumed. The stakes surged hotter, a pit of dread unfurling within her. She could either stand her ground and fight or leap into the darkness, sure that something awaited her on the other side that couldn't possibly be worse than this agonizing uncertainty. Which path would she choose? Would it mean saving Emma, or sealing their fates? The shadows waited, eagerly anticipating her next move. As the air thickened with looming dread, the question echoed in her mind. What would she sacrifice for love? Sarah's breath quickened, the shadows closing in, whispering secrets that made her skin crawl. They elongated, twisting into slithering forms, eager to ensnare her in their icy embrace. You know how this story ends, don't you? The mocking voice echoed around her, thick like syrup. Listen to me, please. Just let Emma go. Each word was a desperate prayer. Yet the shadows only tightened their grip. It felt like the air around her crackled, charged with a sinister energy. Her heart raced. Was she really this weak? Suddenly, a pulse of warmth tugged at her sanity, like the glow of a beacon cutting through the oppressive night. Mom! It was Emma's voice, laced with fear, unrecognizable and swallowed by the shadows. Help me. Hold on, baby. I'm coming. But as she stepped closer to where Emma lay, a wave of shadows surged forward to block her path. They roared, angry and impatient, their whispers turning to growls. You cannot cross the threshold. Not without a price. What do you want from me? Sarah's voice trembled, uncertainty filling her veins like poison. Only what you can spare. The figure, that twisted version of herself, emerged from the darkness, eyes gleaming with dreadful knowledge. It will cost you what you love the most. No. I wouldn't trade Emma for anything. She felt the shattering grips of despair, drawing her closer to the edge of that metaphorical cliff, the abyss yawning beneath her. She felt the ground shift, tilt, and she fought against the pull, her body instinctively pushing back against the darkness. And then something shifted. A flicker of hope danced briefly before her eyes. Memories of bedtime stories, laughter echoing through their home, and the feel of Emma's small hand in hers punctured through the suffocating dread. Each recollection ignited a flicker of defiance. Get out of my way, Sarah shouted, launching the remaining salt at them, creating a burst of light. It scattered against the darkness with a loud crack, illuminating the room long enough for her to see Emma's pale, terrified face. The shadows shrieked, writhing as if burned. For an instant, she saw her daughter's face, hope flickering there like a candle in a storm. Mom, please. Help me. They're holding me. Hold tight, Emma. I'm almost there. Desperate to bridge the distance, Sarah pushed against the floor. But with every step forward, the shadows surged, clawing at her with clawed hands. She could feel the icy fingers probing her mind, filling it with dread. You cannot save her. Not without paying the price. And just like that, the laughter returned, mocking, cruel, echoing within her skull. What if she loves you less? What if in leaving her in the shadows you destroy everything you are? If you break your bond, what remains of you if not a hollow shell? Tears burned in her eyes, raw and desperate. No, she screamed. I won't believe you. Drawing from the depths of her love, she reached for the smallest flicker of light inside of her. A light that belonged to Emma. I'll fight you with all of my love. The shadows howled, recoiling as if struck. But then, an unnatural calm descended. The echoes began to fade, replaced by a heavy silence. Had she really done it? Had she pushed back the darkness? But as the silence settled, an unexpected weight hung in the air. It pulsed, almost alive, as if something greater than the shadows watched. A chill slithered down her spine. Suddenly a small quiet voice crept back into the chaos. "Mom?" Emma's voice was barely there, soft and timid as if the shadows had snatched her words. "Emma!" Sarah rushed towards the void, but a dark barrier held her back. The shadows chuckled menacingly. "What you seek is not what you think." An ominous chill filled the air, and she sensed it. The very room vibrated with a cruel energy. The shadows twisted once more, as if preparing for something worse. "Just wait until you see the price of love." What lay ahead felt unspeakable, a dreadful uncertainty looming like a dark cloud. Would her fight against the shadows cost her more than she was willing to pay? And what dark truth was hidden in the echoes of Emma's voice? Panic rushed through Sarah as the shadows pulsed, their grip tightening around her heart. "Let her go!" she screamed. Each demand felt hollow against the oppressive veil of darkness. "Love is a fragile thread," the mocking voice echoed, sending shivers down her spine. "And you, dear Sarah, are losing grip." "What do you mean?" she rasped, desperation squeezing her throat tight like a vice. Emma's voice, barely a whisper, urged her onward, but the shadows, thick with grotesque shapes, writhed more violently, releasing bursts of laughter that chilled her to the bone. "The price," they crooned, winking at her from the corners of reality, "is already within you." In a daze, Sarah fought to catch her breath. Dark visions danced in her mind. What if she was too late? What if Emma was lost forever to this nightmare? But the more she focused on the visions, the more she lost her grip on reality, her thoughts swirling into the shadows that mocked her sanity. "No, no," she gasped. "I won't give in." With every ounce of defiance, Sarah hurled the salt again, desperate for another burst of light. But this time the shadows screamed, twisting even more violently, their malice palpable. The air thickened, choking her laughter, echoing their disdain. Such bravery, yet so foolish. Suddenly silence dropped like an anvil, and the shadows receded, gasping as if gathering their energy. She stood in the stillness, panting. Sarah's gaze flickered to the darkness where she last heard Emma's voice. "Emma!" "Mom, I'm scared." Her daughter's words dripped with despair, empty yet filled with longing. They ripped into Sarah's chest, raw and aching. The air crackled again, and she could hear the shadows whispering among themselves, formulating plans to steal away the last of Emma's hope. "Tell me where you are," Sarah shouted, her voice cracking. "You have to fight. I know you're still there." The world tilted. A grotesque echo swirled around her, the shadows gathering strength once more. The laughter returned, but this time it felt different, paranoid, mocking yet familiar. Her screams distilled the sweetest essence you can give. "Would you sacrifice your memories, your happiness for her sake?" She felt the darkness pressing in, the weight of their proposition. Memories of giggles, soft whispers at bedtime, and the feel of Emma's little arms wrapped around her all threatened to drown her in grief. "Don't let them take us, Mom." Emma's voice rang through the shadows, stronger this time. The connection surged like electricity, igniting Sarah's will to fight. "No, no. I won't." Fear clenched her heart. "I will not lose you." Pooling her love despite the dread and the suffocating bleakness, Sarah forced her way through. "I refuse your price," she declared, her voice soaring above the sinister vibrations. An instant later, life surged through her body, reawakening strength. With renewed defiance, she turned to the spectral figure that had become a twisted mockery of her own likeness. "You can't take my family's love." The figure's facade flickered, its horror twisted. "And what is love without sacrifice?" The shadows hissed. As shadows merged and coiled around Sarah's ankles, she felt the treachery fester, digging through the cracks in her resolve. The whispers grew louder, clawing at her mind. "Everything you hold dear is slipping away. Can you feel it?" "No," she screamed, pulling against the dark roots that grew ever tighter around her. But the floor trembled. Something was shifting beneath her. The shadows convulsed in anticipation, and a new presence made itself known. A low, growling voice promised dread. "You still don't understand, Sarah. The true price will always remain." And then a shocking revelation unfurled, sending chills cascading down her spine. What barrier had she unknowingly crossed? What was the true cost of love in a world devoured by darkness? Time seemed to freeze, and the air crackled again, not with hope, but with an ominous certainty. "Prepare yourself, it's just the beginning." fear coiling around her heart like barbed wire. Sarah realized this fight wasn't just for Emma's life. It was a battle for her very soul. Would the shadows strip her bare until there was nothing left? And if she faced the shadows again, what secrets would she uncover in their cruel depths? Sarah's breath came in frantic gasps as the darkness shifted, the oppressive weight of the shadows pressing closer. The air seemed thick enough to choke her, swelling with a taint of despair. "Emma, fight back!" she shouted, desperate to reach her daughter through the haze of terror. But the moans of unseen figures captured her ears, weaving through the shadows like a siren's call. "You can't save her." Not without knowing the truth, the figures hissed, their voices gliding across her skin with icy fingers. "What you cherish most lies fractured, susceptible to the cracks you so carefully hide." "Shut up!" Sarah screamed. She squeezed her eyes shut, summoning every glimmer of protection she could muster. But the memories poured in muffled laughter, cherished school plays and small hands that once filled her own. The shadows pulsed like a heartbeat, mocking, jealous of her memories. "Your mind is a dangerous place, Sarah," one of the figures snarled, wrapping tendrils of darkness around her, tightening like a snake ready to strike. "You fear losing her. But what if you lose yourself first?" She shook her head fiercely, feeling the shadows tug at her consciousness. "I won't let you take that. I'll find her." Suddenly, a blinding flash of light erupted from her clenched fists, and the shadows recoiled, screeching in unison. She blinked, stunned, yet emboldened by the flickering glow. It wasn't salt, but something deeper, pulsing with her love as ferociously as any weapon. "Emma, I'm coming." The moment of clarity was brief. The darkness writhed around her, reshaping the landscape into horrid reflections of her own mind. A cold wind whipped through the haze, stirring her hair like skeletal fingers. New shapes emerged, grotesque caricatures of those she once loved, cruelly twisted versions of family and friends. "Don't you see? Love is not a shield," they hissed, their distorted faces pressing closer. "Love? It's the very chisel that will carve your doom." Dread poured into her like thick ink. "Get away!" she cried, recoiling from familiar faces now contorted by shadows, their eyes void and hungry. They extended their arms, begging, but she could hear their laughter, a deep, rumbling sound that seemed to emerge from their very souls. "You think you can stand against the abyss?" The ground beneath her shifted, an undulating mass of darkness. One moment, she was fighting to hold on to the precious memories, and the next, despair began to seep through her resolve. Spreading like wildfire, it ignited doubts that scalded her heart. What if she trembled? What if Emma is already gone? No. Shatter that thought. A new voice flared, the shadows fracturing as if they were screaming at her disloyalty. It was Emma. "Mom! Don't let them in." Stirred by that faint glimmer of strength, Sarah roared, "I won't let you take us. We are stronger." With fierce determination, she forced her vision forward, ignoring the writhing tendrils seeking to sap her life essence. The very ground shook beneath her, and a pulse of energy formed around her. But the shadows were relentless. They clawed at her mind, whispering their dread into her ears, promising that soon she'd see the truth. "You will see, Sarah. There's a reason love falters. They are gone, you never had them to begin with." With horror, she felt the fabric of her soul unraveling, as if the shadows were peeling away her essence. Heart racing, she pushed against the torrent. "Emma, where are you? I need you. Look for the light. Search deep inside." Emma's voice carried through the blackness, a lifeline tossed to her amongst the storm of shadows. But even as she reached for that beacon, fear gripped her like a steel vice. What if she fell into a chasm too dark to return? What if she couldn't find her way back, lost forever in this waking nightmare? Without warning, the ground beneath her shattered. Chasms split open, unveiling swirling voids of darkness. Reality itself bent and twisted as shadows leapt closer, fingers stretching, intent on swallowing her whole. "Emma!" Sarah shouted one last time, clutching the remnants of her hope, now warped into a near-spectral twilight. "I'll find you. I swear." "Then you must face the truth," a voice growled from the depths. "Only then can you save what remains." The darkness surged, transforming the landscape into a tempest of howling shadow. Breathing hard, Sarah braced herself, understanding that her greatest test was just beginning. What truth awaited her in this abyss? Would the very shadows force her to confront the darkest corners of her own heart? As the void yawned wide like a hungry beast, fear coiled tightly around her heart, and the shadows swirled ominously. One question loomed above all else. Would she emerge from the dark as a savior or be consumed by the very thing she fought against? The void pulsed, alive with sinister energy, as Sarah steadied herself against the encroaching darkness. Every whisper of the shadows pricked her skin like needles, but fueled by desperation, she let her love for Emma illuminate her resolve. "I will face the truth," she declared, her voice firm despite the tremors in her heart. "I won't be afraid anymore." The shadows recoiled, their hissing laughter rising like a swarm of hornets, but Sarah pressed on. She recalled every moment she had shared with Emma, the soft laughter, the shared secrets, the way her daughter clung to her during thunderstorms. Each memory provided a shield against the suffocating dread. "You can't take us. We are strong together." Suddenly, a brilliant light pierced the darkness, an explosion that illuminated the grotesque shapes swirling around her. The shadows shrank back, their forms twisting in agony as Sarah felt warmth blossoming in her chest like a roaring fire. "Show yourself," she commanded, her voice echoing through the abyss from the depths. A figure began to emerge, not the monstrous specter she had faced moments ago, but a woman who bore a striking resemblance to her. The reflection of her own fears, her own doubts. "You think you know love?" it taunted, eyes glinting malevolently. "What have you sacrificed? What will you give to hold your daughter again?" The air thickened with anguish, tainting the light that fought valiantly against the shadows. "You don't understand," Sarah shouted, her breath quickening. "I love Emma more than anything. I would give my life for her." A low rumble resonated, shaking the very foundation beneath her. "Love alone cannot save you. It bends and breaks beneath the weight of desperation. You will pay a price and you can't be sure what it will cost." "No." A surge of anger filled Sarah, churning within her like a storm. "Love is pure, and it doesn't deserve to be twisted. I won't let you take my hope." In that moment of clarity, she lunged for the ghostly figure. As her fingers grazed the apparition, she was flooded with memories of lost joy, fragmented images of laughter shattering like glass. The shadows seethed around her, feeding off her terror. "Face your truth," the figure screamed, and darkness erupted, swallowing her back into the horror that heaved within the house. As Sarah steadied herself, she saw her daughter confined within the oppressive shadows, her eyes wide and afraid. Instinct kicked in, and she sprinted toward the twisted form that was once Emma, every heartbeat echoing in her ears. "I'm coming, baby," she called out. But as she reached for her, the shadows erupted in rage, billowing like smoke, shrouding Emma in an eerie darkness. "You cannot save her," they shrieked, voices combining like an orchestra of despair. With fierce determination, Sarah reached into the core of her love, digging deep till she felt every shared laughter, every hug and every moment rooted firmly in her heart. A light spilled from her, pushing against the shadows that surged forward, threatening to snuff out her existence. "Get away from her," she screamed. The shadows writhed, racked by the conflicting forces of love and darkness. Her heart raced, every fiber of her being igniting with determination. She would not lose Emma without a fight. In one last desperate push, she spread her arms wide, releasing every ounce of warmth within her. The shadows shrieked, their forms flickering as the warmth of her love caused fissures to fragment through the dark. "No! Stop!" they screamed as they began to shatter, the grotesque faces contorting into nightmarish shapes, twisting and collapsing inward. "Her love fuels me," Sarah shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos as the shadows shrank. The air trembled. She could almost see through the veil of darkness. With a final explosion of light, the room burst open, and reality twisted around her. She found herself on the edge of the void, with Emma standing just beyond a beacon of hope. "Mommy!" Emma cried, her fear a palpable thing. "Hold on, sweetheart. I'm here." Sarah stretched out her hand, ready to bridge the chasm between them. The shadows hissed one last time, desperate to claim their last victim, panicked fury thrumming in the air. In an instant, their hands met. Warmth surged, filling Sarah with unimaginable strength. "Together, we are unstoppable." With a roar, they pulled against the darkness, igniting the light that had been smothered for far too long. And then, in a breathtaking moment, the shadows shattered like glass, their screams dissolving into the ether. Sarah and Emma stood together, holding tightly as the remnants of the dark faded into nothing, leaving only the hush of night. As the dawn broke through the horizon, they found themselves wrapped in each other's arms, the world around them slowly returning to light. Did we do it? Emma's voice was tremulous but filled with hope. Yes, Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. We did it. We faced the darkness and we won. With trembling hands, she cupped Emma's face, her heart overflowing with relief and love, the horrifying memories of the night fading with each passing moment. We'll always have each other. No matter what, she promised, a fierce resolve solidifying within her. The air felt lighter, filled with the scent of fresh beginnings, as they both looked toward the sun rising in the distance, illuminating their path ahead. Now, as you reach the end of this gripping tale, don't forget the thrill doesn't stop here. You need to subscribe now to the channel, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that chill and excite you. Smash that like button right away. It fuels our journey and helps spread these powerful narratives. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. I want to hear your thoughts on this wild ride. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this epic conclusion. Let us keep the magic alive together.